Have you ever gotten that feeling like, you just need more information? Like your brain just craves it, even when you're exhausted.
Oh, yeah.
Like the other night, I was ready to just pass out, but I saw this article about ancient Sumerian cooking.
Wow.
And I was like, oh, that sounds kind of neat.
Yeah.
Next thing I know, it's like 2 a.m.
Oh, no.
And I am taking notes about ancient beer brewing techniques.
That's amazing.
It's like this insatiable curiosity sometimes just takes over.
Well, it's fascinating you say that because it makes me think about Mind Flayers and their hunger for knowledge.
Right.
But for them, it goes way beyond just a need. It's almost like a primal drive that shapes their entire existence.
I get that totally. And speaking of Mind Flayers, I had this wild experience in a D&D campaign once.
Oh, really?
We were exploring these catacombs, expecting the usual undead.
All right.
But instead, we found this hidden Illithid outpost.
Wow.
And what was crazy is they weren't just like trying to eat our brains. They were experimenting with, it's hard to explain.
Okay.
But it involved like psionic energy and these weird crystals.
Mm-hmm.
It turned out they were trying to create some new form of telepathic communication.
That's a great example of how Mind Flayers can be so much more than just these mindless monsters.
Yeah.
And it actually ties in perfectly with the article we're diving into today.
Okay.
It's called Rethinking the Mind Flayer in D&D, Beyond Basic Illithid.
Catchy title.
It's written by Amir Barakat.
Okay.
He's also known as Bardic Lore.
Gotcha.
And it's published on LitRPG Reads.
Nice.
This article really challenges that traditional view of Mind Flayers as just these evil, brain-eating creatures lurking in the Underdark.
I'm really intrigued by the idea of rethinking them.
Yeah.
Where do we even begin with that?
Well, the article starts by diving into the Mind Flayers' origin story, which is pretty wild.
Right.
They actually come from a place called the Far Realm,
Okay.
a dimension beyond normal reality. Just imagine like a place where the laws of physics and logic, as we know them, simply don't apply.
It sounds terrifying.
It's a very chaotic, terrifying realm.
Yeah.
And somehow these creatures manage to escape it.
Okay. Escape is putting it lightly. The article mentions they once ruled a vast empire across time and space.
Right?
I mean, that's not just escaping, that's conquering.
You're absolutely right. The Mind Flayers weren't just refugees from the Far Realm. They were masters of reality.
Wow.
But then something happened. Their empire crumbled and they were forced to flee to the material plane, where they now exist as just scattered remnants of their former glory.
That's kind of tragic when you think about it, to go from ruling an empire to hiding in the shadows.
It really is.
It makes you wonder, like, what caused their downfall.
Yeah.
And what they're ultimately striving for now.
Exactly. And that sense of lost glory and the constant struggle for survival, those are key to understanding Mind Flayer psychology. It informs their actions, their motivations, and their interactions with other creatures.
So they're not just driven by a hunger for brains.
Right.
But also by this desire to reclaim what they've lost.
Exactly.
That adds a whole new layer to their motivations.
It does. And it creates a lot of interesting possibilities for how we portray them in D&D campaigns.
Okay.
It's not just about mindless monsters anymore.
Yeah.
It's about complex beings with a rich history and a depth of motivation that we often overlook.
That makes me think back to that Illithid outpost in my campaign.
Oh, yeah.
Their experiments with crystals and psionics.
Uh-huh.
Maybe it wasn't just about creating a new form of communication. Maybe it was about finding a way to bridge the gap between dimensions.
Interesting.
To somehow return to their lost empire.
That's a brilliant interpretation. And it highlights how this article really encourages us to think beyond the typical Mind Flayer tropes. It's about digging deeper, exploring their psychology, and discovering that potential for nuance and complexity in their actions.
Like we're peeling back the layers of an onion.
Yeah.
Revealing more and more depth with each new discovery.
Exactly.
And who knows what other secrets we might uncover as we continue our deep dive into the world of the Mind Flayer.
Okay, so we've talked about their tragic history.
Right.
And how it shapes their motivations. But what about their society?
Yeah.
What's it like to live in a Mind Flayer colony?
Well, it's definitely not a democracy.
Okay.
The article explains that Mind Flayer society revolves around the elder brain.
Oh, I've heard of that.
Yeah, this massive pulsating brain that acts as like the central hub of their hive mind.
Ew.
You can imagine it as like a collective consciousness where every thought and emotion is shared. and the elder brain is the ultimate authority.
So no individuality at all.
Not really.
It's like being constantly plugged into a network.
Right.
With your thoughts monitored and controlled.
That's both fascinating and kind of terrifying.
Exactly. And this connection to the elder brain actually explains their infamous hunger for brains.
Oh, okay.
It's not just about sustenance. It's about absorbing the knowledge and experiences of other beings.
Right.
And adding to that collective pool of information.
So it's not just food.
No.
It's like adding books to a library.
Yeah.
But a lot more visceral.
You could say that. And just like a library,
okay,
the Mind Flayers value knowledge above all else.
Above everything.
It's the foundation of their power.
Wow.
Their society, their very existence.
The article talks about how this obsession with knowledge can lead to some interesting situations.
Oh, definitely.
I remember reading about Mind Flayers forming alliances with other creatures. Not for power or domination.
Right.
But simply to gain access to their unique knowledge.
Absolutely. It can lead to some truly unexpected alliances and conflicts.
Oh, wow.
For instance, imagine a group of Mind Flayers collaborating with a tribe of gnomes.
Gnomes and Mind Flayers.
Yeah, and not to enslave them.
Right.
But to learn their secrets of engineering and invention.
Huh. That's wild.
It is.
I actually had something similar happen in another D&D campaign.
Really?
We were exploring this ancient dwarven city.
Okay.
And stumbled upon this secret chamber where a Mind Flayer was working with a dwarven scholar.
Wow.
They were trying to decipher these ancient runes that held the key to some powerful magic.
That's really cool. It's a great example of how rethinking the Mind Flayer can lead to these fascinating and unpredictable encounters. It forces players to think outside the box, to consider motivations beyond simple aggression and domination.
And that makes for a much more engaging and memorable gaming experience.
It really does.
Instead of just another kill the monster scenario.
Yeah, right.
You have to navigate complex social situations.
Yeah.
Negotiate with unlikely allies, and maybe even question your own assumptions about good and evil.
The article really emphasizes that point. It's about challenging the us versus them mentality and exploring the potential for complexity and nuance in every interaction.
Which, when you think about it, is a pretty powerful message, even outside the world of D&D.
Absolutely. It reminds us that understanding is often the key to overcoming fear and prejudice.
That's a good point.
Who knows?
Yeah.
Maybe there are even situations where collaboration, however unlikely, can lead to something truly remarkable.
I like that. So it's not just about rethinking the Mind Flayer as a monster.
Right.
It's about rethinking our own approach to difference in the unknown.
Exactly. The article is a great reminder that even the most alien and monstrous of creatures can surprise us if we're willing to look beyond the surface and consider the possibilities.
It's really amazing how much depth there is to these creatures.
Right.
You know, we usually just think of them as brain-eating monsters.
Yeah.
But this whole concept of a hive mind controlled by an elder brain, it's fascinating and terrifying all at the same time.
It is.
It makes you think about the nature of individuality and free will.
You've hit on a really crucial point.
Yeah.
This article, Rethinking the Mind Flayer in D&D, beyond basic Illithid. It's not just about giving them a more complex backstory or motivations.
Right.
It's about questioning our assumptions about what it means to be intelligent.
Yeah.
To have a society, to make choices.
And it's making me reevaluate my own approach to Mind Flayers in my D&D games.
Oh, really?
I used to think of them as just these evil masterminds to be defeated.
Right.
But now I see them as a reflection of ourselves in a way.
Interesting.
Our desire for knowledge, our need for connection, our fear of the unknown.
Yeah.
It's all there in the Mind Flayer, just amplified and twisted.
And that's what makes them such compelling antagonists.
Right.
They force us to confront uncomfortable truths about ourselves and the choices that we make.
It also opens up so many possibilities for storytelling.
Oh, definitely.
Like, what if some Mind Flayers reject the hive mind?
Yeah.
What if they seek out individuality?
Right.
Even if it means going against their entire society.
Exactly.
What if they long for something more than just consuming knowledge? Maybe even creating something new?
Those are fantastic questions, and the article actually offers some intriguing answers.
Oh, does it?
Yeah. It suggests that there might be Mind Flayers who are dissatisfied with the Elder Brain's rule, who yearn for freedom, or who seek knowledge for its own sake, not just to add to the hive mind.
Right.
Imagine a Mind Flayer who becomes like an artist.
Oh, wow.
A philosopher, or even a revolutionary.
That's a cool idea. That would make for such an interesting character arc.
It would.
A mind flayer struggling with their own identity, trying to break free from the constructs of their society. Maybe even seeking redemption for the atrocities of their kind.
The possibilities are truly endless.
Yeah.
And the article really encourages us to embrace those possibilities, to go beyond the typical mind flayer tropes.
Right.
And create something truly unique and memorable.
So instead of just seeing mind flayers as enemies to be defeated,
right,
we can see them as complex individuals with their own hopes, fears, and dreams.
Exactly.
They might be antagonists, yes. But they can also be allies, mentors, or even tragic heroes.
Exactly. It's about seeing them as more than just monsters.
Yeah.
It's about seeing them as reflections of ourselves with all the good and bad that implies.
Well, this deep dive has definitely given me a whole new perspective on mind flayers.
Me too.
I want to thank Amir Barakat again for writing such a thought-provoking article.
Yeah.
And LitRPG Reads for publishing it. It's a must-read for any D&D fan.
Definitely.
Or anyone who just enjoys exploring those dark corners of fantasy and imagination.
Absolutely.
And leaves us with a question to ponder.
Okay.
If you could absorb the knowledge and experiences of another being just by consuming their brain, would you?
That's a tough one.
And if so, at what cost? Leave your answers in the comments below.
Yes.
We would love to hear your thoughts.